Well, welcome and thank you for all for coming to our career development panel evening. We do appreciate our speakers coming and helping all of our candidates, students, career switchers all find out their new how to make the transition smoothly. So I'm going to start it by asking our candidates our panelists to introduce themselves. We're going to do this, to be fair, in alphabetical order. So our first is Ivana Bertazzelli, and she's from Janus Intech, and we have her up on the screen. So what we're going to do is have her give a little bit of her current position, what she likes about her job, and what she likes about her firm, and what you should all like about her firm, and give a plug of just the general firm to start with and your position in it.
Certainly.
Please.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ivana, and unlike what the trend is, I've been with Intech now for just shy of 30 years, so definitely have a lot of history with the company and watching it grow. My current position is Vice President Portfolio Analytics, but as you can imagine, when you're with an organization for that long, you tend to wear many hats throughout your career. And I actually had a choice of where I wanted to rest my last few years, and portfolio analytics seems to me the most likely solution for my professional affluence as far as what I do and how I can do it better. And performance is definitely a little bit more of my interest because numbers work better than words. English is not my first language, so forgive me, I'm going to say it in advance. If I make up words, just go with it. I'm sure you'll get the gist of it. So just understand that I have very good intentions. But nonetheless, I have a team of 3 people that work with me, and we report up to corporate finance, so it's an interesting location to put portfolio analytics. And what we do is literally just as it sounds, analyze portfolio performance mainly and attributions, and I'd love to share with you a little bit more on the subject, but without hogging it up from the rest of my panelists here, feel free to reach out to me afterwards and I'll happily give you more insight.
Thank you very much,
You're
Ivana.
welcome.
Lisa, would you like to share with us what you love about PNC and
Sure.
private welfare and
Sure.
helping?
I want to congratulate you for having 30 years with a firm. That's amazing. Yeah, and welcome. I've been with PNC for 11 years. My role is not that of the traditional corporate recruiter. I do something a little bit different. I'm a talent scout, so I'm a couple of steps in front of our corporate recruiters, just identifying top talent in the markets. I often try to identify who are the top performers, top producers with the competitors, and then I make sure that they know who PNC is. And we have, in most cases, at least 24-month conversations along the way to allow somebody to get to know PNC. Should they feel that the timing is right to make a career move, they might want to look more closely at the opportunities with PNC. PNC is a traditional full-service bank, financial services, and the nice thing is that there's a clear dichotomy between what Ivana can offer to you and what I would be able to offer to you, because the roles at PNC that I won't say require the CFA, but we do prefer that CFA designation. The roles are very different. We're more client-facing. Less on the analysis side, more on the really interactive side with the client. So you would have that opportunity to find your career path. Are you somebody that thinks more in technical terms, or are you somebody that really likes interaction and client-facing opportunity? We'll be able to get into that a little bit further tonight, so you'll have 2 clear choices as you kind of explore what might be best for you. Where is your own passion?
Well, thank you for sharing your passion and PNC's passion. Andrew, do you want to share with us what Franklin Templeton made you have passion for?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been at Franklin Templeton in Fort Lauderdale for a little over 3 years. So I'm from New York originally. I worked there for 15 years. I was mostly on what's defined as the sell side. So I was a market strategist, kind of selling research for a couple different firms. I worked for a firm called Brown Brothers Harriman for a number of years, and then I got the opportunity to relocate down here a couple of years ago. Franklin Templeton is a big global organization, 9,500 employees. I think there's 600 investment professionals. I was just looking at our Franklin Templeton Careers website this morning. I think we have over 100 postings, and about 50 of those are in the U.S. Our big presence are really in St. Petersburg and in San Mateo is really our corporate headquarters. So my role, I'm an institutional portfolio manager. I work in the Global Equity Group, which is about 34 investment professionals. I help manage some separate accounts on the global equity side. And I do a lot of client meetings, client presentations, attribution analysis, things like that.
Excellent. That was a very good analysis of what your position is. Thank you. Rachel Truck is with Poland Capital, and we do have a number of our charter holders in our association are from Poland. So thank you for representing that firm for us tonight. Can you share with us what you love about Poland?
Sure. I'm Rachel. I'm the Director of Human Resources at Poland. I've been with the firm about 9 months. I too moved down from New York City, where I had been for not just my whole career, but my whole life. So bit of culture shock coming to South Florida, but happy to report Poland has been terrific. We are an investment manager. We've got around 22 billion AUM, and the focus is high conviction growth equity. So very, very niche within the broader investment space. We are located 5-minute drive from here, headquartered in Boca. We do have another office in Boston. A couple of our employees are here, so thank you for coming. And my role really runs the gamut, anything and everything HR, inclusive of recruitment. So happy to get into that a bit more as the session progresses.
Thank you, Rachel. And would you entertain questions from the audience as the evening goes, or do you want them to save the questions until the end? So just raise your hand if you have a question that you would like anybody to go in further, and we'll delve into it while it's fresh in everyone's mind. So we're going to start with, for your firm, when you find candidates and are trying to fill open positions, we're going to just go through and see what the different firms do about different things. So I'm going to just start at this end with Andrew. When something opens up in your area, what channels do you rely on to find candidates, and in what order? Can you give examples, including asking around in your network, LinkedIn search tools, job postings, and where and when you post, Twitter or other social media? So, and do you go to HR, or do you have external recruiters for Franklin Templeton?
We use our internal recruiters. So when we have an open position, we'll develop a job description with the internal recruiter. They'll draw up the job description, the qualifications that we're looking for. That'll get posted on our website, which is franklintempletoncareers.com. And it also gets posted on LinkedIn and Indeed. But anyone that applies goes back to Franklin Templeton Careers. So even if you find it on Indeed or LinkedIn, it's going to bring you back to that Franklin Templeton Careers, and that way we can maintain that database and assign it a kind of a number, if you will, so we can track that through the process.
So do your postings go through internally first and then external, or do they just go external at the same time?
At the same time. It goes all at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ivana?
Sure. So we do a very similar technique as well. We have a posting internally. It's available on our website. It's technically through our parent company. Intech is predominantly owned by Janice Henderson, which is headquartered in Denver, Colorado. Most of which, I think the number one in speaking, I don't do the hiring anymore, but long gone are the days when we used to put ads in a paper. It's all through LinkedIn. That researching and asking around, it is the number one choice for us is through LinkedIn connections. But I think what I've learned is when you post it on LinkedIn, it then disseminates into a variety of different other sources like Indeed and a few other locations. So I think the database is internal through our own website portal, but all the applications are available. There is one more thing that I may not have stressed on my job description, and that is that we're mathematically driven. Unlike most money managers, we too are institutionally, because of our mathematics concept, we host a lot of PhDs. And with that, another big forum for us that makes us a little bit more unique is we do a lot of career fairs and events at either universities or various societies, such as I think it's called the Math Association of America, and that fosters a lot of interest as well. So in addition to our traditional style of recruiting, the career panels, working with career societies, as well as these associations that have a PhD element to it. And then one more thing is that we do use headhunters as well. So we'll negotiate, we'll work with a headhunter, and it's really whoever brings the best candidate to the table. Something that what oftentimes I'm asked when they learn that I've been with an organization for so long, how do you do it? And the reality is it's the people. The idea is to always find an organization where you like the people, because the job you'll learn to love if you're open-minded, but the people you can't change, so you better enjoy who you're working with. So keep that in mind.
And I failed to mention the CFA Society website too. I don't know, we definitely post on there as well.
Yeah,
I actually
excellent.
just saw a job posted up there when you were scrolling through there.
Lindsay has one up there.
If anybody's interested in that job, I can tell you about it.
Excellent. Lisa, I saw you nodding away for a lot of what they were saying.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. It sounds, comparable. If we have an opening, it begins with a posting internally, and in most cases, we'll simultaneously post it externally. Right now, PNC has an endeavor for 2019, which this should excite you. While you're not an employee of PNC, this should excite you when you hear this kind of language. We're working very hard to find internal talent and promote internal talent, to promote internally. When you come in, we say, your career is in your hands. We're here to help you and help explore that. But it is in your hands. We're kind of flipping the script a little bit. And we've got our recruiters recruiting internally now, and hiring managers are told, if we find high potential talent on your team, we don't want to risk losing them to the competitor across the street. Help us identify them and help us elevate them and move them into the next great position where they can, explore that next career step within PNC. So that's something really new for us. So things are posted internally. Things that are posted externally will also be driven to the standard Indeed, I know is a popular one. So again, this is something a little bit outside of my realm because I don't work with active requisitions, those positions that are open. I'm always out there calling and looking for talent and getting to know who's in the community, who are the talented folks that we should know, that we want them to be aware of PNC. So I use LinkedIn. That's my modus operandi, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable introducing myself, and I hope that you become a comfortable LinkedIn user where you can approach possibly a recruiter. If you can identify a recruiter, approach and introduce yourself and say, I'd like to learn more about your organization. I either heard about it from this website, or I heard about it from a colleague that may have used to work there. I hear great things about it, or I use that institution, or things like that. Again, if you demonstrate that likability, like Ivana said, one of our internal slogans within the walls of PNC is people do business with people they like. That's it. So while, and again, the roles are very different. With the roles that I would be able to share with you at PNC, an investment advisor, individual that's working with portfolios of investments for individuals, not the institutional side. I mean, we have that, but tonight I think that our CFAs might be a little better aligned with the investment advisor roles. It's clients that have about $2 million and above in investable assets. So you would have 100% authority, discretionary authority over their portfolio. You have to be able to listen and understand where we call goals-based approach to investing. So you have to understand what are their interests, what are their risk appetite, things like that. So you've got to be a really good listener and interact. One of the key things, we can find people that are technically qualified all day long, but the team that meets a candidate will come back and say, we didn't find the energy we need, or we didn't find somebody that's relatable. If you go to lunch, if you go to breakfast, if you grab coffee with somebody, if the conversation dies down, they're waiting for you to pick that conversation up. Be interrelatable. This personality will get you so far in the world. Like I said, a lot of people can be strong technically, but that personality will really get you there. We say, that's somebody we see fitting into our team. I could count on this person. I could trust this person. I would want to put this person in front of my client today. So that's kind of where you want to set yourself up. What was the question? I talk a little too much.
You actually covered the next one too, so I'm going to
Oh,
help.
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn is my primary source. Another
Yeah.
great source, and I'll just real quickly, another great source is the internal network that we have. Our
Okay.
employees that have come and have been great employees, we say, who do you know? Who have you worked with in the past? Who would you recommend to us? Who, and introduce people to me. I get referrals all day long from employees. They say, Lisa, we're not sure if this individual would be a fit at PNC. Could you still have a courtesy conversation? Absolutely. Let me explore it with them. Let me give them some of the background of what we've got going on over here, and we'll find out together.
I'd like to add to that, us at Intech, they too really incentivize employees to engage with the referral program.
Yeah, don't you guys get paid
Yes,
extra
yeah.
for bringing somebody in too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's nice, a little extra perk.
How about Poland? Does Poland pay you to bring it?
We do. We just rolled that out. Just kidding. One of my more popular
Smart.
initiatives. We do have an employee referral bonus, which is fantastic because we know that all of our employees have strong, well-connected networks, and we're happy to save a possible search fee by getting the referral internally. In terms of how we go about posting, at times, there's actually a couple right now, retained searches happening, and those won't necessarily be posted on our website because we're going through a search firm and we're now contractually obligated to use them. But for the overwhelming majority of the roles, we do post them on our website, on LinkedIn, through organizations like the CFA. We also do posts at schools. We use Handshake, which anyone's in school, I'm guessing you're familiar with, which allows us to post at schools all across the country. But given our location in Boca, we almost always, if not always, post at FAU. We've got one part-time intern from FAU right now, not a CFA candidate or charter holder, but she's a senior with a marketing focus working for our marketing team part-time. We've got a couple of FAU alum who work for us full-time, so FAU is definitely front and center on our radar for sure.
Nice. Well, thank you, Rachel.
I'm going to keep it on you for a second as we switch back and just say, our next question is, what specifically on LinkedIn do you look for to search for a candidate? Can you give us a specific example of how you would search for somebody on LinkedIn?
Sure. So I would say, I don't love this in life, but on LinkedIn, I would say more is more. It's much harder to search for a candidate who's got a very minimal presence on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So as an example, we were looking for someone on our marketing team and we weren't going to use a search firm, so I did do quite a bit of digging and outreach on LinkedIn, and the more kind of keywords that match what we're looking for, the better, and the easier it is for me to pull them up. With that said, we don't want fluff, so things like prior work experience and anything related to your degree or academic career that you're proud of, I'm much more focused on than how many people you have singing your praises down at the bottom of the page, because the substance needs to be there. But I would say that if anyone is a job seeker, they should certainly have kind of a robust LinkedIn profile, so that if a recruiter or an HR professional happens upon your page, they have a very clear sense of who you are, what you've done, and kind of like the full story.
So Rachel kind of covered that one, but she's still nodding away. So is there something you'd like to add to what?
I think those keywords are so important. Even CFA, that I'll start a search with that keyword in a location.
Oh, okay.
Because again, the demand is, hey, we prefer somebody with the CFA credential, Lisa. So that's where I'm going to start.
Okay.
It's so important. Other than that, I would say, again, LinkedIn is not Facebook. Keep it professional. If you choose to use a picture, my recommendation on the photograph, make yourself look approachable. And a lot of people use, you'll notice my photo is not like a professionally done photo, because I just wanted to give a little bit more approachability so that I don't lose anybody, perhaps. But again, as a professional, keep it a professional photo. The ones that kind of get under my skin are the family photos. I don't get that. I mean, unless you're in like maybe social relations or something. I don't know. But I like the professional photos. It's not necessary. It's not required to have a photo. But believe me, sometimes hiring managers can be judgy, you know, so why risk knocking yourself out preliminarily for something silly like that? Just, you know, look at your photo and just make sure it's professional looking. Make sure, and I often, probably in my career, I've probably at least a dozen times have linked somebody, emailed them and said, you're a professional, I'm sure you'll want to be aware of the misspelled word in your profile. And and most of the times they'll thank me for that. We go fast through life, we might mistype something, so it's always best to just ask a colleague or a friend, could you review this real quickly? I think I've got everything in there, but just, you know, another set of eyes can be helpful sometimes.
Yeah, you can copy it in Word and spell check it.
Yeah, yeah.
Ivana, did you have anything for LinkedIn? Example of how you use it to search on?
I think
They covered
my
it?
ladies on the left definitely covered it all. Keywords, more is definitely better. And definitely keep it professional. Interestingly enough, one of the comments that our HR specifically said is avoid politics because your opinion matters to you, and then, you know, in a search, you're not really promoting what your thoughts are at that point. So keep politics out of it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a little later all the like mistakes that you've seen people do, and well, yeah. So, Andrew, you want to take the first of the next questions?
Sure, we can move on.
Okay. Can you tell us the process at your firm? Take us through a specific example of Franklin Templeton. Like, once you have a posting, how many resumes do you receive? How quickly did you receive enough resumes that you stop looking through new applications? What is the role of the applicant tracking systems if your firm uses one? And do you still keep the posting up even though you were at least temporarily not reviewing any new applications? Those kind of more specific things for people to know about how it works for you.
Yeah, so we definitely use that application tracking system. So when you apply on our website, you know, you get a case number, I guess, or a job number that, you know, you can track. We keep the posting open basically until we have an accepted offer. So it's open and we're still accepting resumes, you know, right until somebody fills that position. I would say it really depends on kind of experience level, how many resumes we get. You know, that will vary greatly from job to job. So as I said, there's 150 jobs posted on there now, and you know, some are 15 plus years experience and some are 0 years experience. So you'll get quite a range there.
So for somebody with like 2 years experience going for a new analyst position, how many would Franklin Templeton receive?
Probably hundreds.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have a number of different groups. We have, you know, kind of the Templeton group. So the larger parent organization is Franklin Templeton, but then there's a number of different investment boutiques within there, and that's where people sometimes get tripped up and confused a little bit. There's the Templeton group, which is based in Fort Lauderdale. There's the Franklin Equity Group in New York. There's Mutual Series in New York. So there's 7 or 8 silos within there. That you may not even know is a Franklin Templeton company. K2 Advisors is our hedge fund in Stanford. So yeah, you may not even know that some of these are part of the organization. So once the recruiter will screen the resumes initially before they'll pass it on to the hiring manager to see if they're interested in the candidate, and then the recruiter will definitely reach out to the candidate first and just make sure their qualifications are really, you know, what they say they are, and their expectations are the same. And I think we're going to talk about Skype a bit in there, maybe a next question, but that's definitely a tool we use a lot, especially initially in terms of screening candidates. So usually the recruiter or maybe someone within the hiring department will definitely have a Skype interview with candidates before they'll bring them in, especially since we're, you know, located in Fort Lauderdale, and a lot of times we're getting candidates, you know, from around the country, or New York and Boston. So that's a tool we use quite a bit.
Okay.
And then the candidate can track that with that job number and that tracking number by logging back into Franklin Templeton Careers and kind of see what the status of that is.
Okay. That's excellent, very detailed. Any questions from, does everybody here know what the applicant tracking systems are and how many firms use them? Everybody seems to be.
I would say with just more and more data and, ability to push things out, it's just a necessary for big firms. There's no way that, they could screen through that many resumes.
Right, that's actually my question. How much weight do you put on that? 100%?
Which one? The keywords?
Yes.
Well, you can put a cover letter in there, and that will often trigger, maybe some interest in the candidate. I can go through my own experience. I mean, basically what I did is that I set up a job search on the CFA website when I was in New York and I wanted to relocate to South Florida. Put in all the criteria, South Florida, portfolio management, and I tracked that thing for 2 or 3 years before the job popped up that I liked. And then I wrote a cover letter that was very specific to that position, very specific why I wanted to move to the area. And the recruiter got back to me within a couple hours. Basically as soon as they hit their desk, they said, okay, this person's really serious about it. And then the ball went from there.
That's excellent, thank you.
The only thing I can add, everything that Andy said is spot on with what we do, and we also use the application process, the tracking system. But some of the other key factors about the benefit of that is, as I was shared, it's all electronic, so there's an advantage to having everything electronically filed, and that leads to the affirmative actions and all the legal requirements needed to accommodate various states that have certain demands. And so for that reason, it's become, I'd be surprised that more organizations don't use it, the way things are. So
EEOC,
yes,
sure.
Yes, so I think that is definitely the wave of the future if it hasn't already gotten there. So by all means, and as far as the number, there's no number as how many resumes we're going to accept. We'll keep accepting resumes until the ideal candidate is matched, and we never take that application down or that offered job posting down, mainly because until we know that the person's in the door, even after the applicants accepted the offer, there's such a process that anything can happen at any point from either party, and so the risk of not having the momentum continue is too great for them to actually push it down.
So you keep it posted until they're in the door?
Until they actually start work, yes. Even after they've accepted the offer. Because after, for us, and we may get to that, but after a position has been accepted, because we are regulated, so strongly regulated, sadly, there's all sorts of background checks that need to go through, and we take a lot into consideration. And I don't want to jump ahead, but I think that you'll learn why it's important to pass a lot more tests than just the job interview process.
One thing I'd like to point out, and it's not Poland specific because we only have 72 employees, but I don't think most job seekers know this. If you are a large enough company and you're a federal contractor, you're actually legally obligated to post any role, even if you have an internal candidate. So I know this is tough on people who are job seekers because they'll see a role that's not actually open, but it's up and posted. That's not the companies doing that to be annoying and waste your time. It's actually legally required. So just something to keep in mind when you're frustrated that you hear back from a recruiter that a role is actually filled and the job had just popped up 10 seconds ago. So you're saying to yourself, how could it be filled? That's just kind of a common, that's why. So smaller firms, less so, but certainly firms the size of these folks up here.
So it's over 50 employees they have to do that? Is that what the size is of the, when you
I'm
have
not
to
sure
start?
the exact number. I know I worked at RBC prior to Poland, and all big banks are federal contractors as far as I know, and we were required to post every job even if it was pre-filled internally. And it had to stay up for 3 business days, yeah.
Or it could be for the visa requirement.
That's great, thank you. This guy's helping me out. For anyone who's applying for a visa, a work visa, it is often a requirement. So there could be an employee working at a firm who is applying for a visa and the firm has to post their role for a certain amount of time. The thought behind that is you need to prove to the government that you can't find a qualified candidate who doesn't need a work visa. Again, we as the companies are not making these rules. These are being set by the government. So that's another reason you might see kind of like a false job that isn't actually open posted somewhere.
Okay, what happens with PNC?
Same thing.
You
Same
have an
rules,
applicant
same rules
tracking
apply.
system?
Yeah, we have a huge database. The other advantage to having that applicant tracking system is that recruiters can go in and look at resumes that came in 6 months ago for that keyword, for that,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
and we'll
That's
absolutely reach out to you. If we feel that you're potentially a great candidate, we'll call and say, you know, are you still looking? Are you still active? Would you know, want to look at something that's going on right here? So yeah, that's another advantage to having that huge database.
Okay. So let's switch back and, so who wants to take the next one? I won't say what it is. Who wants to go first?
You're looking for a volunteer.
Okay.
I'll volunteer.
Great. Thank you very much. So how big a factor are references in your hiring decisions at your firm?
I'll be honest, they're not that big a factor. Maybe internally, I would say we call it vetting somebody internally. We may ask internally if somebody knows. But in terms of references, our thought process is you will ask somebody who will give you a good reference. You're not going to hand over something blind, you know, and I would say if you're going to ask somebody to speak on your behalf as, you know, and recommend you for something or be a professional reference for you, please ask them what they're going to say about you, because back in the day when we did do references, sometimes we had some really bizarre comments and you wonder, did they even know that this person would disclose XYZ, you know? So we've always said, if you're, you know, we don't do them. We don't do the references. Cover letters are important, like Andrew said, if you think it through. Don't just do something generic, please. Because the minute I start reading something generic, I say, could be a lazy person if it's something that sounds like it's canned, like it's, you know, somebody else wrote it. Personalize it as much as you can. References. There was one other, background checks, again, very important. The drug urinalysis would probably be something in most organizations
Let's get it.
today
That was a
will come
question
up.
later, but
Yeah.
let's go into it now. So when in your whole processes do you guys do background checks, and do you do the background check for credit and drugs and other things, or and felonies, or what do you screen for when you screen background checks?
I think we use an external company called HireRight. I don't know if you guys use that or if you heard of it or not, but they don't do it until actually after they're hired. So after they're hired, they'll check, I think, the last 7 years. So it's either education or work experience or kind of whatever you've been doing for the last 7 years, you have to fill out, and then there's an external company who will verify that.
So they don't need to not have any felonies, and they don't need to do any drug check?
No, we don't do that. No.
Okay. And how about?
We do national background checks and FBI checks, so it's very thorough. We do not do credit checks, and we don't drug test.
Okay.
Yay.
Wow.
But that's mainly
That's 'cause they're in
because,
Colorado.
yeah, so I was about to say, it's not us. We used to when we were owned by Prudential. That was not only drug test at the time of hire, but it was random drug testing. But when Janus acquired us, that completely went away. So, but interestingly, you mentioned something that I thought that was odd when I had learned of it, because I've been far removed from job interviews, but I thought references were so important. They're not. They're not, because they're noticing, and obviously the validity behind that, who's your reference or your source could be, you know, biased. So, but professional, if you're going to give a reference, don't give, you know, a high school teacher or, you know, a coach. It's better to
Mother-in-law.
keep it, yeah, or mother-in-law, yeah. It's better to keep it professional. You know, if you are going to give any name, make sure it's in the realm of job expertise that they can validate.
Thank you.
I think the LinkedIn recommendations might be good for just kind of some credibility. You know, I look at them. Rachel doesn't put as much confidence in them, perhaps.
I would look at them. I just
Yeah.
wouldn't look at them instead of
Right.
job
Oh, never.
experience.
Right,
or-
never.
yeah.
Right. But I do look through them just to see if, if there is the things that jump out at me sometimes in the LinkedIn are awards and recognitions. If you've met numbers, exceeded numbers, things like that, that's a standout employee. We do background checks. We use a third-party firm as well. We let them know what we need, checks in the block. They come back to it and they say everything matched. If you fail part of a background check, we will never know what part failed because that third-party firm keeps that confidential and they just say, did not pass, not eligible for hire. For us, I think that the background check is performed after an offer is accepted, but that's, I believe for us, kind of the verbiage might be different. We're not considered the employee hired yet until they've come through the background check, until that's all approved, and we know they're eligible for hire.
So do you do felonies, credit, and drugs?
It depends on the role.
Okay.
This is a fiduciary type responsibility. In most cases, a credit check will be appropriate. We've changed from year to year, and again, that's all about compliance and risk, a whole different side of the bank. They'll determine, what are the legal, what can we do legally, what should we do legally, what are we, required to do legally. But yeah, we do, like we used to do fingerprints. I don't know if that's part of it anymore.
Well,
We do, yeah.
Most,
FBI,
if
if you
series,
get an FBI, you have to
yeah,
have
if they're going to be
fingerprinting.
an IAR, they're going to get fingerprinted or need to have
Right.
that stuff.
So yeah, a criminal background record and the drug check are the standard.
Okay. And
Credit.
We also do the background check after the offer is accepted, but the offer letter language says your offer is contingent on a successful background check. We check everything, including credit. We had done that prior to me for some time and then moved away from it, and actually just this year we had Mercer in and they asked specifically if we were doing credit checks, so now we're back doing them again. The only thing I would say as kind of a word of advice here, because I've had friends who've gotten tripped up on this, if you fill out an employment application, tell the truth. Don't say you've never had a misdemeanor if you've had one, because if these firms use these background check providers, you might think it's expunged, but they might find it, so you're always better off telling the truth. This has happened to a number of people I know with public intoxication or DUIs, certainly nothing to make light of, but not felonies, but they ended up not getting the jobs because they lied on the applications.
Exactly.
So, always better to tell the truth. And
with
don't
that-
get arrested.
Yeah. And with that, not only about the felony or any acts that you may have engaged, your credentials. Be truthful. If you graduated from the school, that's great. If you didn't, don't say you did.
Yeah.
Because that will definitely come up. And believe it or not, we've had several instances, and I still am shocked to think that people would lie, outright lie, and think that they're not going to be discovered. But people we actually offered positions to and wound up not having, being able to extend them that
The
hire.
indication.
But there's a gentleman in the back. Yes, sir.
I had a question about employment verification. If you're still working with a company with these external background checkers, what extent are they going to alert your current employer that you're seeking to leave? I mean, is there a risk?
That's why we do it after.
Yeah, that's,
So
yeah.
That's why we do
whatever
it
the
after.
language they use in terms of extending an offer.
I know on our application, you're asked, do you authorize PNC to contact your present employer? And most people say no, which is fine. We would not do that then. We may contact the previous employer. But from my knowledge, I don't think we even closely look at that. Again, we rely on that third-party firm to be able to let us know that the employment dates are accurate and the name of the company is accurate.
But I think almost everybody, when you accept an offer, where there's some legal thing, at some point you will sign that you authorize them. So they don't normally contact a current employer until you've signed that piece of paper. So they don't, it's just not
Yeah,
done.
we would fail miserably if we were not discreet with these conversations and allowing you to, move your career into another organization, we would be terrible failures if we didn't observe your need for discretion.
And I can share, I know of an instance where here at our organization, we had hired somebody and they had accepted and they had allowed us to do all the background checks, but because it was a sensitive situation where he was waiting to share with his current employer that he was going to be leaving because of bonuses, he didn't want to jeopardize losing his bonus, so exceptions were made. Again, I'm with what Rachel says, be honest, just say exactly what your intent is so that, then the employer, the current, new employer could know how to handle it. And certainly nobody wants to put anybody in a situation that's awkward for either party because that's not the way you want to start a new relationship. So be upfront and just say exactly what your intentions are.
Great questions. Great questions. Do any of your firms Google the candidates and at what stage? And can you give us an example of something you found that impacted a candidate's chances?
I'm going to go first with this one because I think it'll be the easiest. No, absolutely, positively, no Facebook, no Google, no Twitter. We make it a point. The less we know about your social and personal life, the better it is. Also, it puts us in a disadvantage because then from a criminal situation, you can be discriminatory based on something you've seen. Even if it wasn't intentional, you can be deemed that, oh, you used that against me. And so we make it a point to avoid it at all costs, not to get any. Now, LinkedIn, that's why my reference earlier about politics, that's why we don't want to have any judgment made based on your personal life because that should be personal.
So that's really fascinating because the first firms tend to Google college candidates extensively. So you guys don't.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So, the other firms, anybody Google?
Same, we do not.
No, in fact, we have to remind hiring managers sometimes, please don't do that. You can see the wrong information, it can be a complete lie, and you're already forming a bias now against this person. It's not even the same person, or it's just misinformation. Also, even through the company, we've got our compliance and legal teams that say, should you encounter anything that might pop up during an interview process that may seem there was something legal in their background, you have to go forward with the interview process. We'll catch it at the stage of the compliance in the application type process when we do that. It will be caught, but as us, the hiring manager interviewing individuals, candidates, we can't stop that process should we even perceive something like that.
That's fascinating. Okay. We're going to go swing back a little bit. There was more questions on resume and LinkedIn profiles. You don't have to go into them if you've kind of covered it, but so what jumps out at you in a resume? What's most interesting to you? What's your initial screening criteria?
Oh, somebody's got to talk about the 7-second rule, right?
Okay, you go for the 7 seconds.
Tell us about the 7 seconds.
Okay, this is, I'm just sharing this with you because this is inside baseball, right? Okay, 7-second rule. If I look at a resume, I'm looking probably for 3 things before I even read your resume. I'm looking at the number of jobs you've had and the period of time that I'm looking at, are you a job hopper? Every 2 years is your job changing? Now, it may be completely legitimate. As I look more closely, it might be the same firm that changed names, the same company that changed names through acquisitions. But if you don't put that clearly on your resume, I may not be that well informed to know that. So I'm seeing somebody that's hopping jobs. That's the first thing I look at. I look at your current organization to see if it might fit culturally or size-wise. Size is important when you say somebody that comes out of an organization of 25 people versus 55,000 people. Culture is going to be different. So I'm looking at if you might be a good cultural fit. It doesn't mean you're not qualified. It doesn't mean I won't call you, but I'm looking for the best resumes right now. So in my 7 seconds, I'm looking at that. Job hopping, does your organization match what I'm, a competitor to my organization? And then last, I'm looking at your title. Does your title seem to fit what I'm looking for? In that 7 seconds, now I figure out if I want to even read your resume. And if you didn't meet those 3 things, I'm probably not going to go any further.
Oh, wow. This was very honest. Okay.
It's very honest.
You got 7 seconds.
Everybody that's been in HR knows the 7-second rule. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Investment objective statement, do you recommend that or not? don't know where we are.
Personally,
these days.
I rarely read them because I'm so disappointed in them. I so often find something that's just been regurgitated from somebody else.
Okay.
If it catches my eye and it seems like it's, from the heart and it's authentic, absolutely, I love them. But please don't just copy and paste something. Do not copy and paste items out of a job description
That's what I was gonna
to
say.
make
It's
your
kinda personal,
resume.
yeah.
It just shows a sign of laziness. Be authentic, okay?
Wow, that's good information.
I mean, what you read in the job description, you can absolutely share, translate that into your success story, though. Tell us your tell us your story. Yes, tell us your story.
Okay, Rachel?
So I echo the job hopping, definitely for me a bit of a red flag. And the reason behind that is because if you've only stayed at your past employers for 9 months to 18 months, what's going to be different about you coming to work at our firm? We're not looking to hire people for that short of tenure. Typos, I always say, have someone else read your resume. Once you've been staring at a document long enough, it's very hard to see what may be obvious. So have print it out, use a highlighter, have someone go over it for you. If you're responding to a job where the requirement says strong attention to detail and you've got 2 typos in your resume on things like the name of the college you went to, this stuff happens. Do I really believe that you've got strong attention to detail? Now you've cast it out. And I do think recruiters don't spend all that much time. If you got a stack of 100 resumes, you're going real quick. So, don't make those silly mistakes because you never want to give anyone a reason to discount you that you could have, you can't create job experience that wasn't there, but you can't prevent a typo. Objectives, I don't love them. I don't always read them. I think if there's something about you specifically that you need to get across to the firm that you're applying for that you can't get across via your resume or cover letter, potentially related to relocation. So a good example would be, let's say that you're living in New Jersey, but you're applying for jobs in Florida. But actually you've already moved to Florida, but you don't have a Florida permanent address yet, so you couldn't put that on the top. That might be an opportunity to put kind of one line beneath your contact info to say, recently relocated to Florida. Then the firm doesn't think that you have to fly here for interviews, that they have to pay to relocate you. So I think you only use those objectives if it's really something that there's no other logical spot for. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
No-nos are a major distraction. I didn't realize just how much, because I'm sure I'm making them all the time. As I said, I'm not the words person, but clearly it's a turn off for a lot of people. Lengthy is boring, I was told,
Yeah.
time and time again. Keep it short and sweet, to the point, and apply for the requirements. So you may actually have to modify some things in order to really have your resume stand out that's applicable to the job that's being offered. So be aware, as much as we like to just summarize it into, this is everything about me, you may need to tweak it a little bit. So keep that in mind. Yes.
Excellent.
How would you overcome the perception of job hopping? Say if you did, you did have a 9-month period at your last position.
So I asked my HR specifically that, because as I said, things have changed over the years, but the one thing that I was told is that as much as it's not understood, it's an opportunity for you to explain yourself. It won't rule you out, or rule anybody out for that matter. And certainly explain yourself and make that your point of reference at the very onset of either that first liner or in the cover letter, saying, I'd like to explain my changes. Be forthright.
Yeah.
Because if not, an assumption will be made that you can't hold down a job. And that's the one thing you don't want to do. Circumstances change for everybody, and quite honestly, we can't control everything or everything around us especially. So use that as an opportunity to explain yourself so that an assumption isn't arrived.
Yeah, I'd say that's like in that short cover letter too, right? And it's your opportunity to put 2 or 3 lines in there why you really want that job. And I see it all the time. People put together cover letters that are, full-page documents, and they'll start, "Dear Mr. Franklin, I'm interested in the Equity Research Associate position." So they're just copying and pasting, or they have a program or whatever, and that's worse than not doing anything at all.
If you didn't catch the joke, they think he is Franklin Templeton.
So, really quickly.
Yes, of course.
Because I understand, like, you don't want, or a canned cover letter, a canned resume wouldn't be great, but at the same time, it's a numbers game, and there's how many jobs do you have to apply to before you can get an interview? So I'm just trying to figure out what the balance is, and maybe your experience doesn't meet those key words, but you'd like to make a shift in your career or something. So I don't know. These are
Well, one advantage you might try to position yourself for would be networking, professional networking. When
Okay.
somebody can speak on your behalf from within that company, if you can, again, professional networking like what you're doing now. There's lots of great clubs out there, Toastmasters, just like things like that. Get into your community, and if somebody can speak on your behalf. I had our regional president bring a CV to me yesterday that says, "Look, she's got tons of great relationships in the market, and she's a builder. Let's talk to her. She's not doing exactly what we're looking for, but I know it's somebody worth speaking to." So there are other ways that you can do that. And another thing that we haven't talked about, and I know every one of these firms has it, is you can set, like Andrew had mentioned, a saved search for yourself on that web page so that you can have the right job driven to you. You might just not be spotting it out there. You can usually set up a saved search which would include keywords or title, location, geography, maybe even like a distance from a zip code, things like that. So take advantage of some of the digital tools that are out there on the career websites.
I think
Or maybe, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say maybe do both. So if it is a numbers game, then maybe that's one method. But if you're doing the screening, those are the jobs you really want to kind of take your time at.
I think for the jobs you're truly interested in, like you're excited about them, so this isn't going to be every job.
Right.
The networking is key. I remember when I was looking at Poland, when I applied and I realized that this was probably going to be, my dream job in South Florida. We have all our employees listed on our website. I started looking them up one by one in LinkedIn. I figured out who I was connected to or who I was second connected to. And again, you're not going to do that for every job, but if you find something that you're truly excited and passionate about, that doesn't take that long. Like, it's worth spending an extra 15 minutes to figure out who you know there or who you know that knows someone there.
Alumni.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, look for those connectors that you have
100%.
socially.
I'm going to say another thing in addition to, there's a lot of wisdom behind, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So that is exactly what, Lisa and Rachel are referring to, because that goes a long way. In addition, I'd like to make another quick little remark. Sometimes it's also identifying a organization that you really are, you connect with them for some mysterious ways. You want to work for this company, whether it be Templeton, Intech. I have a personal example right in my own office, a gentleman that works for me now, who actually interviewed with me 3 times before I made him an offer. The first time wasn't enough experience, then it wasn't just the right fit, and I could not be, he's like a right arm to us, and honestly, it's just be persistent. Don't give up. Sometimes you have to look. When he realized he didn't have the credentials that we were looking for, guess what he did? He went back to New York, got a couple of years of experience in the bigger organization, and got his CFA designation, his CIPM designation, and then we couldn't be without him, So be persistent. Don't think that, you're just looking for a job. You're really looking for an organization that you can associate with. And the other thing I was going to say, you mentioned alumni, connections, know your contacts. maybe this is a personal matter that I have very close and dear to my heart, and that's volunteering. I volunteer a lot. I don't need to, obviously I don't need it because of a job, but I just do it because I just enjoy it. And I've learned to enjoy it, and what I've learned is that I'm not connecting myself anymore because I don't, I'm done with my professional searches, but I know a lot of people that need searches, and so now all of a sudden I'm able to associate different needs and people, and that's all because of volunteering for all sorts of different venues.
Yeah, I actually had a very seasoned banker here in South Florida. I call him a South Florida legend. He's with Wells Fargo, just a fabulous gentleman. And he told me nothing satisfies him more than helping another professional find the right job. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat to know. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would echo those comments too. I mean, I'm actually kind of going through that right now. I have a nephew who's in New York, and he's just got out of business school, and he took a job that he doesn't particularly like. It's not exactly the career path he went. And I kind of told him my story, which was I took a job I didn't particularly like, but it was at a firm I really liked. And I just went to the next floor. I wanted to work on 10. I didn't want to work on 9. And I banged on the gentleman's door and I said, I know I don't have the qualifications. What do I need to do? He told me what I needed to do. I went and did it. And he called me 2 years later and said, we're looking for somebody now. I kept in touch with him all the time. So I think that idea of the right firm is invaluable.
Yes.
And if you don't like what you're doing, go walk around, talk to people, network. Don't be shy.
And I will throw out that the CFA board, we try to have networking at all of our events, and if you come early, the board of directors meets people and will introduce you around, as we all try very hard to do, especially the younger people that are in our area looking for new positions. We try to work our way into directing them to who they should talk to. Did somebody over here have a
Yeah, I
question?
have a question. You mentioned about job experience and trying to tailor it to the expectations for the job. So in certain instances, you're going to be overqualified maybe, or certainly underqualified. So how many of these certain check marks do you have to check in order to be considered? I mean, if you're 80%, 90%, if you're 50%, are you wasting your own time? I mean,
I think that when people write job descriptions, typically the bullets closer to the top are the most important.
okay.
So that let's say there are 7 requirements for the job. 1 through 3 are probably going to be more important than 4 through 7. You're not going to write your most important qualification and have it at the bottom of the list. So I think you got to pick and choose and try to figure out, what's the core aspects of this job, and those are the ones I should focus on versus trying to be all things to all people.
And the CFA preferred, and if you're a candidate, does that weigh into the CFA, like your
Yes.
potential future CFA?
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
It takes people a long time.
That shows huge
to get it.
ambition
Yeah.
on the part of an individual. When they strike out to pursue that, that's a huge differentiator among talent if somebody's not in that space.
Okay, so level 2 would be better than level 1, and
Well,
Yeah.
sure. But
Because
even
that shows-
pursuing it, yeah.
That shows commitment and devotion,
Yeah.
Now, if you say pursuing CFA and I ask you, when did you start, and you say 2008, I'm not going to be happy. I can put that on my resume.
That gentleman.
Point of, the date. Do you appreciate the dates of graduations or dates of sitting for CFAs and when you're the candidate for the next one?
So technically, you understand, to put it on a resume, you have to be signed up for the next exam. So if you want to say you're a level 2 candidate, you actually have to be signed up for the
right,
exam.
we're sitting.
What would you like to know when I pass level 1?
No.
I would say
Yeah.
signed up for the program relatively recently is enough. I think that shows initiative. But like if it's 10 years ago or something, that's
So
different.
complete like level 1 and level 2 in 6
Yeah.
months, that's,
I mean, more the better, obviously, yeah.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say if you're just a level 1 candidate, that shows initiative too. And sorry.
I was just going to say, use it like, when you're graduating with your GPA, obviously if you're magna cum laude, you want to promote that.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
concept.
people that
if you-
say they
if you
got their charter in 18 months, if you got it in 18 months, put it on the resume.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure you see this too. I like when I see people with initiative to go out and learn modeling or go out and learn something that you can take an online course. There's websites like Wall Street Prep where they'll show you how to build a model. I know it's, you have to pay for it, and some people, that may not work out for, but I think anything like that shows that that's what I want to do, and I'm moving towards that. You know, that goes a long way.
To that point, if you're trying to get that job that you may not have all the professional work experience, but you've demonstrated, you know, classes or certifications, would you recommend putting that at the top above professional experience?
I think so. I'd be interested in the 7 seconds. Do you go number of years of experience? Is that like a cut and
No,
dry? I mean, do you?
that'll be part of the reading if they pass the first 7 seconds.
But I would say with that, in my opinion, I think like people that are changing career paths or that have stepped away for various reasons, stay at home for 10 years and then they come back into the workforce. I think what's prudent in that environment is that you're demonstrating your willingness to educate yourself even during that period of absence or that transitional period. And that's really key. And that's where these charter holders or these other designations that, prop up that could be appropriate and show your interest and commitment. But this gentleman's raised his hand a few times. I'm so sorry.
Sorry, I was just curious, what sort of percentage, anecdotally speaking, do you see cover letters with resumes? And what are the general opinions? I know you mentioned it earlier. I mean, what are the general opinions about cover letters?
So I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm happy to share that with you. I can get that figure. I would say more than half, based on my little knowledge of reading all the resumes. I can tell you, though, they're a major turnoff if they're too lengthy. Keep it brief and to the point. Use it as an introduction that's specific to the individual that you're addressing or the position that you're, focusing on. But don't delve into your whole history and, your background too much on that cover page. Don't use that. That's my experience. Lisa,
I
don't know how
have
you
0% in my world because I'm working with passive talent. I'm not working with people, I'm approaching people that aren't looking for a job today. I almost have to, bully them to write a resume. I always say, blow the cobwebs off your resume, please. So that somebody here knows that you're serious. But it's a lengthy conversation. So yeah, I don't, personally in my world, I don't put a lot of stock in the cover letter. It's just not necessary to be invited to come in and look at a job. A little bit different in recruiting.
A couple more.
Yeah, how about to international students? Do you guys, your companies have very friendly immigration policy?
We do. At Intech, since I could tell you all of our PhDs are foreign individuals that started through a visa. Earlier today we were talking about work visas, and these were actually student visas that then we converted to work visas for the program. So we do have quite a bit of exposure to that, even in our very small. I mean, my firm is 80 employees firm-wide among the various locations, and I'd say all of our PhDs are pretty much foreigners. So, and personally, I have parents of an immigrant, so I love, and respect their ambition. So
There was one more. Please.
I'm a student at Palm Beach Atlantic University and we graduating this May. And my question is something probably a little basic. I am one of those candidates who are going to go back to the workforce after 2.5 years of being separated, and because I decided to finish my career. And how long to the past should I write in my resume? Because I've been working since a very long time, and I'm 46 years old. And I've been working in the hospitality business, but I'm definitely changing my career. My major is finance. So how far should I go in my resume? 10 years, maybe 15 years? What would you suggest?
I would defer to Rachel on this. I know what I would say. I'm just curious about Rachel's impression of that. It's an excellent question.
Yeah, so I think you can mention everything so that there are no gaps, but the jobs that were 20 plus years ago are one line on your resume with the dates. They don't need descriptions. So let's say that, you came out of college or you came out of high school and you were a server. We know that you've been working X amount of years. Like, you can write that you were a waiter at Chili's, but I don't need to hear about what you did at Chili's if it was 25 years ago. But I do like to see that there aren't gaps, so I think just keep it very brief, but you should put anything on there that is part of your story.
So there's no time limit?
I often, and again, this may not apply to you directly, but in most cases, generically speaking, I say about 10 years, but only what's relevant. And that's why Rachel mentioned one line is enough. We don't need to know the responsibilities of your role necessarily, as it's not really relevant to what I would be looking for. But yeah, like my resume, my personal resume, just at the top, it just mentions, you know, a 20-year enlistment in the Marine Corps. I'm not going to talk about what I did in the Marine Corps because it's not going to be useful in the world that I'm in today. So I mention it so that it's apparent that, you know, I didn't just, I did graduate, but it wasn't that, you know, right out of high school. It was 20 years after being in the Marine Corps that I pursued my degree. So, that, you know, again, it's fine to be creative sometimes. And again, that individual sense is important to be able to lay that out on your resume.
So we do have one question this really ties into. What about someone who's currently unemployed? How big a deal is it? What do you recommend people do to mitigate this?
Well, it was a little easier to kind of broach that area 4 or 5 years ago, or at when the economy shifted. Right, when the economy shifted, it was kind of an understood. We understand that a lot of people are going through some transitions right now. I would say, as a part of sourcing, not necessarily recruiting. If I see this, if we get into this, I always say, be prepared to talk about it. Be prepared to have an honest discussion about why there may be some gaps. What were the transitions? Was it due to relocation? Was it due to family situations? Don't run away from it. Be ready to be asked. You will be asked about it. So that's the best I can offer.
And if it's 6 months to a year, I mean, that would seem reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
two firms that consolidate and maybe your job went away and it's not that much time.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Would that same approach hold for people changing careers?
Well, again, you'll be able to address that. That's an easy answer. It's like, well, you know, I can approve of that, or I can definitely respect that when somebody says, you know, it's not easy to change from accounting into healthcare or something, you know. So yeah, absolutely. That's a legitimate reason for that gap.
Will it be hard to transition? Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
It
it's
will
not-
be.
It's steady
Don't-
employment, but
Yes.
account management versus
Yeah.
something else.
It's not going to be an easy transition, but it certainly is not impossible.
And
So-
the more you can do to pad your resume with online coursework in that area of expertise, I would say the same for if you're out of work. I know that looking for a job can be a full-time job, but do something. Go volunteer while you've got some free time on your hands, because it's going to make you seem like a much more motivated, hardworking individual if you can say, you know, I've been out of work for 6 months, but here's what I've been doing to fill my time, versus like sitting on Indeed.com all day, which, you know, only gets you so far. So I think the more that you can show that you don't like unemployment and you like to be busy and, you know, all of that stuff. So it's hard to hear, oh, I've been out of work for 2 years, and then, well, what have you been doing? It's a much better answer if you say, like, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm at a food bank 9 to 12. So just something to think about.
I have one more question. Thank you.
As many as you like.
The number of pages of the resume still matter?
One.
One if at
One
all
page,
possible.
yeah. I've seen,
Double-sided?
No margins?
I've seen, and we certainly don't ignore them, we'll look at them, but they're not as appealing. You know, leave some things to the imagination, okay? Give all the points. So I'm a believer, like Rachel said and Lisa alluded to. Show your history. I mean, your history is your history. You should be proud of it, even if it's, you know, working at, you know, at a Chili's or a
Yeah,
Pizza
what
Hut.
if the hiring
Yeah.
manager used to work at Chili's,
Yeah,
right?
so now you have a
that's the reason not
connection.
to leave it out.
Yes, I totally agree,
Yep,
but just
yep.
keep it simple. Just
Yeah.
keep it simple. Less is better. but show your history and be proud of it.
I
There's
was gonna say
nothing to hide.
the Marine Corps example is a great one. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd never gone into an interview without somebody wanting to know about
Sure.
that, right?
And thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
What are the biggest turnoffs, if you have any, in a resume? When you look at a resume, is there anything that turns you off that everybody should know about? I think the 7-second lady might have a whole lot more than
Misspelled words, really, or not fabrication, I'm not going to notice fabrication, but I am going to see regurgitation. You know, just copy and paste out of a job description.
Yeah, I would say unless you're going for like a, very digital or media savvy role, keep it looking like a resume. We don't need you to get all too creative in this industry. This was back when paper resumes were still the thing, but I had one come to me that was scented, one come to me on purple paper. Like, let's just stick to yeah, this was back in the mid 2000s, but certainly if you're going for a more creative type industry, maybe there's a little bit more artistic license to get original with your resume, but if not, keep it in very standard font on white paper. And
So I think biggest turnoff, scented resume.
no scented resume. Also, don't wear scents to an interview. Just general, keep the scents out of it.
Yeah, that's a very, very key thing to note to people. A lot of people come in too strong.
Question up front.
Oh, sorry, another one. Just wondering, I've seen this more in creative fields, but even in finance on job boards, I've seen right next to the cover letter and resume an option to upload a portfolio. Is there anything in particular that you're looking for in a portfolio or a display of work?
Sometimes we'll hire people who are going to be writing content for us, and we'll ask for writing samples, but other than that, I can't think of any time we asked for kind of additional information. It's really in this, for industries I've worked in, it's only been when someone's going to be responsible for writing in their job, and we've asked to see other things they've written.
Now, I have heard of firms that, for people that want financial planner, investment advisors, they actually bring them in and give them like a financial plan to do, which takes hours, and that really weeds people out. Look at
Presentations. We do mock presentations for our institutional side. And it's a board that you'll sit in front of, and it's no more than 30 minutes, but you're given materials in advance so that you can step into it, because again, we want to be certain that this person's going to be, exude the confidence in front of a client and prospect. It's not even a client yet. These are prospective clients, so yeah, we do mock presentations on the institutional side for sure.
Yeah, I think case studies are fair, and stock pitches are fairly common in certain industries, but that would be part of the interview process, not something that they were asking you to do when you strictly applied.
Right.
Okay, we're going to switch a little bit and ask questions about, do you suggest people use Headhunters? And if so, for working with a recruiting firm, what should a candidate look for to assess the quality of a recruiting firm? What are the hallmarks, warning signs, or practices of a not so good recruiting firm versus a good one for people to know about? So anything you want to throw out on recruiting firms?
The only thing I could say, we do use recruiting. We have used it, and we will continue to use them if
So
necessary.
can you throw some names out that were names that you use?
No.
Okay.
Not because I'm keeping it a secret, no. I mean, I could tell you what we've used, Robert Half, Apple One, those kind of, they come to mind. Pride Staff.
We had Robert Half here last year. They were one of our panelists. And I will share with you what Robert Half said. They said, if you're a millennial or career switcher, you need to dress professionally. You need to write thank you notes, even though everybody says that's gone out, or at least email the people that you interview with. They said, you need to cover your tattoos. You need to get a haircut. You need to dress in a suit and be very professional. Even if the firm you work for will never, once you're in there, you dress business casual. They said that it really, it's still very important.
There was a note that, the reason why I said no initially about the question is because there are newer companies coming up all the time, but the one thing that was advised is that we don't like dealing with headhunters if they charge the candidate.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
that's something that we don't like to, just so that you know, if somebody's charging you for them to find you a job, it's probably not somebody that an organization like ours would work with.
PNC may use some third-party search firms, but only for some anomaly-type roles. For anything that we would need, like a pipeline of talent, mostly sales professionals in banking, we don't. We've got the internal teams that do that, kind of like, that's what I do, basically. However, I want to ask, and I don't know if it's applicable to potentially this audience, but sometimes if you work with a search firm, especially a staffing firm, you can get in the door somewhere on a contract and be a contingency employee for 6 months and get to know the culture, get to know if it's the right organization for yourself, and then end up with a job offer. Sometimes that part-time employment can result in job offers. I know it does happen in accounting and finance specifically. I don't know if this audience if that might be helpful as well.
So we actually do that a lot in our admin positions and our IT positions. I'd probably say almost all of those positions have always been contracting to full-time employees. So that's very common by us. And actually, I personally think it's a win-win because it does give you that exposure, but you're not the commitment, so to speak. So if it works, great, and if you prove yourself, even better. And if it doesn't work, then there's no harsh feelings. At the end of your term, you're done. Everybody moves on.
You've got one more thing for your resume.
Yeah, that's right.
So Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't rely solely on a search firm to find you a job.
Yeah.
So it's not instead of your own efforts, but certainly if they have a track record of placing candidates like yourself at firms that you would want to work for, those are questions to ask. We use search firms almost exclusively for much more senior searches, where quite frankly the talent is really almost always all passive. A passive candidate essentially means someone that's not looking for a job that you're trying to poach. We do at times use search firms for more administrative roles. Wouldn't apply to you guys, and some of them do end up being temp to perm, where we hire someone on as a contract, and then they're great, and then we hire them full time. But I think not knowing each of your specific backgrounds, my gut is most of you aren't going to be in like the sweet spot of search firms, and you are going to have to do a lot of it on your own, but there's definitely no downside in pursuing both angles. In regards to what Robert Half said about dressing for the interview, I think you don't always have to wear a suit. I think the rule of thumb is whatever the dress code is for the company, you err on the side of a little more formal. So if the company is casual, meaning they wear jeans, you don't need to be in a suit, but you should probably be in business casual. If the company is business casual and you're interviewing, you should probably be in a suit. So always just be slightly more formal than they are, and I think you're fine. I think a suit could be potentially overkill for a job where everyone's in jeans or athleisure.
But, so if Robert Half, I think, was having them come in for interviews and then they sent them out as a recruiting firm. So if you don't go into Robert Half in an interview suit, then Robert Half's not going to actually take you as a client.
Well, then go to Robert Half in a suit.
Yeah, I would say very common these days too is Skype and video
Yeah.
conferences too. So I would definitely recommend treating that as like a
It's
professional in-person interview. Get yourself set up, get your lighting right, open a window, put the plant behind your chair. You want to make it look like it's an office setting, even if you're in your bedroom.
No dog barking.
Yeah, no dog barking.
Don't be on your couch.
Yeah, and the other thing we run into a lot too is that you get the technology glitches, right? So one recommendation I would make is that when you're dealing with a recruiter internally, an HR representative, ask them if you can set up a test call, at a 5-minute test call. Just can I make sure that this works? The technology's there, because we run into it all the time where you're all ready to go on a Skype interview and nothing, it's technology's down and it's just a big hassle. So.
And just to circle back with you on the Franklin Templeton and the Headhunters, did you have?
I don't know about at Franklin Templeton. I mean, in my prior roles, it's definitely been more senior positions. So they would actually come to us and ask us if we had a list of clients that they could go
Steal from, yeah.
Steal,
Okay.
look at, you know. But I would say the other comment that was made was more the temp type positions, and I think that gets back to if it's the right firm and it's the right department, take it. You know, that's your foot in the door. You can always, you're there, you're sitting there every day. So if a position opens up that you like, you know, you got to treat what you're doing currently as if it's very, very important, but keep your eyes out and ears out.
I was going to add about the video conferencing, which we do, but we've avoided using Skype, just as an FYI. And now all of our video conferencings are actually at specific locations. So you physically have to go. So even though you may not physically be present, you physically have to go to a location that the company that we assign.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because of it didn't happen with us, but apparently there's some suit where people are recording their videos, and that's a no-no. And so to avoid all that, it's in an environment where the individual can initiate the conference, the
that's
video.
fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's a lot better for the
yeah.
candidate
So the candidate
too.
was recording?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes, so that's not good. So that's why to
Just so
avoid
know
that,
that.
it's in now all of our video conferences, and we do a lot of them. But it was noted to definitely dress completely. Even if you are going to do this, don't be just half
No naked
dressed.
interviews?
Yeah, it actually happened. That was an example that we had where somebody was dressed in a suit up, but down, he got up accidentally to go move something, and he was in his boxers, so that was a little, unprepared. Avoid chewing gums. That's a big distraction. Don't chew anything. If you're in person, colognes at a minimum, because that could also be distracting for women, maybe some men. Less makeup, not too much, and just always be professional. And don't talk too much. I found that was going to be a challenge for me if I had to be in an interview today, but I found somebody that's competitive to me.
Well, that really goes on to interviewing, which is the next little section on how you like to interview, what interview questions do you like to ask, what do you look for in the answers, do you give tests of knowledge, do you give personality assessment tests, which one, and do you ever use Skype or video or do initial phone interviews, and tips for this situation. So you just gave us lovely tips, Ivana. Lisa, do you want to?
Yeah, you'll hear a lot of behavioral-based style questions. We try to avoid the questions that are yes or no, more like, tell me about a time when you were a part of a team and you led the team, and what were the successes that you had? How did you overcome any of the challenges of the team? You know, how were you instrumental? And I'll just let you tell me that story then. Be prepared to be able to tell a story. So again, those behavioral-based questions are a little bit more insightful, I think, in determining if it's a good fit, a good match for the culture maybe, or the team itself. You could interview with a team one day, and 3 years later, that's a different team that's assembled there, and you may fit better with that group now, kind of based on your personality or whatever, that authenticity sometimes. So our questions are not technical so much in nature. The hiring manager may get into some of that, but in terms of recruitment, we're just trying to find a good fit for the culture of the organization, and then let the hiring manager determine the fit for that actual job specific.
Okay, and do you have any tips for Skype or video interviews?
Well, I need to take that back to my compliance. That's all I know. No, we do them rarely. We're just starting to do that. It's not something that we like to do because we're very client-focused and interface with our clients person to person.
So you want to see the person.
Right. I can say that if you're flown in for an interview and your luggage doesn't show up, and you run out to the Walmart to grab, a quick suit or something like that, just be prepared to, you may have to do that. We had somebody show up with the suit from Walmart and tennis shoes, unfortunately, and didn't get the job because he didn't think about buying, just a pair of nice dress shoes. It's just unfortunate, but again, it's kind of like judgment. Luggage can be lost, so you may have, nobody's saying go to Armani or anything like that, but just kind of be prepared to, gee, what do I do now?
So it was a test and they failed. Rachel?
We use video conferencing quite a lot. We use a service called Zoom instead of Skype. And I agree. It needs to be treated the same way you would handle an in-person interview. You should be professionally dressed. It should be quiet. No pets in the background. Don't have your phone out. Presumably you might be using your phone, but don't have other technology. No gum. I suppose you can't smell anything through the phone, so feel free to wear
Not
whatever
yet.
cologne you want. Not yet, right? That's true. But we'll be here next year, and you'll be able to smell through the phone. And again, I think video conferencing is just going to be more and more popular in the coming years, especially as a lot of firms let employees work remotely, and you don't necessarily have to physically be in each and every office location. Interviews, we do a lot of them. We're a small firm still. We've got 72 employees as of today, so fit and being a part of our culture is really important. I think I met 13 people before I got the offer, so we definitely put people through the ringer. But I think one thing that's really critical, and you should have this nailed down, practice in front of the mirror, film yourself, is because almost every employer is going to ask, like, why this firm, why this role, why are you interested? And you need to have that answer very crisp and succinct, and make sure you're getting the name of the company right. And because
So why this firm? Why this position?
Yeah.
Why this? What was your
why
thing?
now?
Why now? Okay.
You know, that's kind of like that's like your story. You know, why am I here, and why do I think now's the time for me to do this job at this company? I can't imagine you would ever go through an interview process and not have someone ask you that question. And I usually ask it right off the bat, and if they bomb that answer, like, I'm not sure people really recover all that often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you should be ready for that question.
Yeah, sometimes I start with, tell me what you know about PNC.
Yep.
It's a bad.
It's a bank, yeah.
Let's start.
Ivana, you want to answer that question? Tell us how you like to interview.
About
Tell
what
us some
PNC is?
personality assessments test. Which one?
Yes, there's somebody that does
Oh, we
them.
use
Yeah,
those.
you
We
use them.
You
Yeah.
do, yeah.
So we use them. We generally don't use them until much later in the interview process. So
Yeah,
this
because
isn't
they're
around.
costly, so it has to be like at the end.
So we use something called an Enneagram. You guys can Google it.
What is it? Can you spell it?
It's spelled ENNEAGRAM. It's called the Enneagram assessment. You can take a free one online. It only takes 5 minutes. It's essentially akin to Myers-Briggs, but instead of the letters, which can be confusing, it's a 1 through 9 scale. Each employee comes, and there's no wrong answer. It's not as though if you're a 2, you're bad, and if you're a 7, you're great. But we do look to have diversity of personality types on teams so that we have diversity of thought and people are challenging one another. So we don't exclude people because of it, but we might at the final stages have our interest piqued more if we've got a sales team that's really heavy on 2s, but 2s in this assessment tend to be like very chatty and personable, and we need someone who's going to be more of a like, let's get things done. So we might be, if it comes down to it as the deciding factor, we might lean in a different direction. That's why we do it. It's certainly not ever used to say like one particular score is better than another, but we don't do that until much later stages. And then we actually have them retake it when they start, because a lot of people don't answer honestly while they're interviewing, because some of the questions they ask are like, how are you with deadlines? And if you're interviewing for a job, you're not going to say that you're a procrastinator because you want to get the job. We don't see how you answered each question. We just get the score back. So we actually would not be ever able to ding someone if they answered that they were a procrastinator. But of course, people tend to be more careful when they're looking for a job. So
That's fascinating. That's great. Okay, Ivana?
Oh, we don't use it for the interview, but we once hired, we use a DISC, D-I-S-C program, and that's really just more because of the concept. you can't change as much as we like to think we can change others. We can't, but we can control ourselves. So the idea of the DISC program, which is why we encourage all staff to take it, and you take it throughout your career at Intech, it's not just a one and done, is really to understand who you're working with, because every personality comes with certain expectations, and therefore if you're a D, for example, in the DISC program, is a very dominant individual. They're the ones that you just leave out the fluff, just go in with the facts, and that's how you're going to get your response. If you're about to engage a conversation or have to work on a project with an I personality, we'll be prepared that they're going to be a little bit more social. They're the influencers. They're going to be the chatty Cathys of the team. The S's are the more stable. They're not going to rock the boat. Don't expect change from them. So you need to know what you're going to go into. And the C is the conscientious, analytical. If you want an answer from any one of these C personalities, be prepared to give them 12 different opportunities and solutions for them to choose from, because they're not going to give you a response until they've digested everything. So know who you're working with, which is really, really important, but only after the fact, because it doesn't help you getting into the job, but it'll help you do your job. And that's really the key of that personality testing as we administer it.
Well, that was fascinating. Andy?
It's definitely not my area of expertise. I think we use something called the STAR method. You ever heard of that?
No.
Is that something? I think it's called the STAR method, but I don't know
Yes,
much about it.
for interview questions.
Yes, for interview
Yes.
questions, okay.
Yeah,
Maybe you can tell me
remind
about
me of that. No, you remind me.
I don't know, I just know
think
that's
our retail
kind of
group
our
does that.
recruiters
Yeah.
told us that's what they use, but I don't know much about it.
I'll have to think about it.
But
I didn't know
when
that.
I go on interviews, or in the past, I always like to ask about the job. And one of the questions I always like to ask about the job is what type of job it is. Because in my mind, it's, it's either a stepping stone job, meaning that somebody just got promoted, and if they can tell you about that, maybe you can see kind of the trajectory. It's a job where somebody just left, and there's a pile of work on the desk like that, and you're going to be kind of, up to here as soon as you start. Or is it a job where, maybe the firm just went through their goals and they decided, we want to grow sales 5% for the next 5 years, and you're going to be tasked with that. So I think you want to know those things before you go in. And I don't think you need to have a reaction in an interview, but I think asking where the role came from and kind of what the progression is fair, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if there's a takeaway at all, I'd like to definitely encourage you guys. The interview is a two-way street. It is not just you being interviewed by the organization's staff. It's you interviewing them. So I certainly would be, I'm very much delighted to have an interview situation where I'm being asked questions, because one, that shows that you have an interest in learning more about the organization and the people, and two, it really creates more of a form of engagement where other questions can arise. So be prepared to interview whoever you're going to meet, or a lot of people you're going to meet, because nowadays I don't know you're just meeting one person anymore. I know in our organization you said 14 people. Yeah. Well, my job took 13 months to get, so yes, so be persistent if you want something. But there was a
couple of questions.
Yes.
I think the STAR program is asking for specific examples. So the interviewer would say, give me an example of the time you had a conflict with a team member, or give me an example of a time when you overcame an objection from a client.
Yes.
But it's very specific, situational, asking for examples. Whether you're asking about that.
Great.
Yeah, and we'll always ask for a stock write-up at some point too, if it's an analyst position. So we'll want somebody to present an idea to us, and it may sound obvious, but it's super important. Know the philosophy of the investment team you're talking to. Is it quantitative math? Is it fundamental value? You need to know that before you engage in that. Super important.
For sure. There's a gentleman. Oh, it was a gentleman up there.
Another question?
I was just going to talk about the STAR method.
Yes, yes,
I remember at my previous employer, it was in banking, they used the STAR method, and that's how they determine your pay based off the STAR method. So is it the same with you guys, depending on?
I don't believe so.
It's just a method of kind of setting the stage for a question to extract certain answers, basically. If you Google it, I'm sure that STAR interview question, it's, again, it's just another way of saying the behavioral question, but the STAR, each STAR stands for something. It's just that trigger for a recruiter to remember how to present the question, sort of. Yeah, I didn't know that they could consider basing pay on some of the answers of that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Just a follow-up question to that notion of knowing who you're interviewing with. Do you guys put preference on having that background for, let's say, analysts or investment associates to have, experience in fundamental value or high conviction growth for Poland? And then along with that, do you prefer having candidates with any programming experience or quantitative experience with those backgrounds, or is it just, you're kind of just looking at it from a different perspective?
I would say like any technology skills are welcome, doesn't matter what your role is. Like no one's ever going to tell you you know too much about programming or technology. Depends on the role. If it's entry level, we're definitely more open to people not having a background in the space, because how would you have gotten it? We hire a lot from MBA programs into our investment team, and those people tend to be career switchers who went back to get their MBA so that they could start studying this from an academic standpoint and then put it into practice for a job. But if I'm being candid, if we're hiring someone to be a portfolio manager, we're going to want them to have had specific experience in the type of investment strategy that we offer prior to coming, because we're hiring them to essentially run a team, so they need to already be very ingrained in this approach. But certainly at the more junior levels, we're open to teaching you if you're willing to learn.
I could tell you in our environment, technology plays a very key role, even in portfolio analytics. So again, the concept of staying, the longevity of my career path has been the willingness to adapt to new technology. And that really is something you need to embrace, because the reality is that the world's going to keep revolving. And if you don't evolve with it, you will definitely fall behind. And you have to embrace the change, and technology is the #1 driving force. So what I do today really is no different than what I started out right after out of college. It's just that if you were to ask me, am I doing it the same way? Absolutely not. But my job function is basically the same. So it's just learning how to do it differently and really employing that key at your fingertip. And so programming and the coding is very critical in our world, and I would imagine everyone else is adapting to that as well. So
I mean, my 7-year-old is learning how to code at school. He's in 1st grade. So he's already surpassed me, since I do not know how to code, and he knows something about coding, presumably, at this point. So,
being efficient and showing and demonstrating your efficiency and being able to have a workflow process. So whether you apply it to a particular task or a function or your path of your life, express yourself in that regard, most certainly.
Yeah, I would just echo, it's the experience level. So if it's just, fairly entry level or a couple of years, I mean, certainly your ability to do investment analysis is more important than your style, right? But if it's 25 years later, then, that's going to be different.
Thank you.
Okay. Great questions. In an interview, has anyone ever been able to change your mind after an initial negative impression, i.e. turn a no into a maybe or a yes?
All the time.
If you can say yes to that, can you tell us what they did to make that?
All the time. I can't think of a specific example, but I'm shocked all the time when I when I answer the phone or get a call from somebody and I'm thinking, this is not going to go well. This is, we're just not right for them. They're not a right fit. And they turn me around, and it's just so exciting. And I can't wait to share this story. You're not going to believe who I got to talk to today and what came from this conversation. So absolutely, I say get into the conversations, if you can. And another thing, if there's a level 3 something out there, think there must be a level 2 at some point that will be posted. So if you apply to a level 3 position, if you see like career levels will say, if you see something and apply to it and you feel, I don't quite have all of this, they're looking for 15 years of experience and I have, 4 or whatever, think that recruiter's smart enough to say, you know what, we've got a level 2 right on the horizon here. We should probably talk to this individual still. So don't necessarily hesitate to apply to something that seems a little bit, they're looking for a little bit more experience. Don't necessarily hesitate, because you need to get that introduction done first. You need to let them know you're interested in their company. But yeah, I definitely, all the time, I get people that just like amaze me, and I would have never noticed it from their resume or their LinkedIn bio or something like that. It just all comes out in the conversation, though.
Yeah, it's kind of back to one of our earlier questions too about how long is the job posting up there. Definitely be persistent right up until there's somebody sitting at that desk, because things happen. All of a sudden, the person's offered the job and they turn it down, or something else happens. So, if you're in the running, especially, you want to be persistent. Make sure you stay with it. Don't just assume that it's done until it's really done.
So, also, how do you feel about how candidates follow up after an actual interview? What do you recommend, if anything? What makes a good impression or turns you off in a follow-up?
You mentioned earlier handwritten notes. I personally don't think that they're out of style just yet. I think they still weigh heavily with our organization. But there is something that I thought was interesting in conversing with some of the other folks, and that is be a good listener. When you're in the interview process and you're having a conversation, make mental notes or jot things down of something that was said by the interviewee, and ask and reference it in your follow-up letter. Say, by the way, I really enjoyed learning about your affiliation with this company, and just make a quick little reference, because that goes a long way, because it's not just a matter of having you being thanking them. It's a matter of letting them know that you were not only sincere about being present, but also sincere about listening and enjoying what they had to say.
Yeah, and how are you going to solve their problem too, right? Because they're hiring you because they have a need. So whatever that need is, if you're listening to it, an email is fine for me, but I think we could do X, Y, Z, or I think my abilities would allow me to help you in this need that you have. So that's kind of that two-way dialogue that we were talking about in terms of you're interviewing them and trying to get information you can use for that follow-up as well.
Excellent point. Rachel, you have any?
I mean, I think one thank you note is appropriate, whether it's handwritten or email. No typos. Reference the conversation in some way. Specifically, if you had a chance to go back and look up something they mentioned, you can say, thank you for letting me know about X. I spent some time on their website and I was impressed by Y. I mean, anything that you can do to show that you were paying attention and you care to go the extra step. But again, just make sure it's succinct and grammatically correct. Put the right name of the company. Don't address it to Mr. Templeton. Yeah, I've had that happen to me too. It's crazy.
And one response is probably enough, right?
One response is enough. Yeah.
Don't email on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
No. And don't expect a reply. That's another thing. Don't read the company not saying you're welcome or it was great to meet you too as a bad sign, because I know I don't reply to everyone who sends me a thank you note, and that's not necessarily because I'm not interested in moving them along. It's just
a time factor.
Yeah.
So is there anything, I'm coming to the end of some of I'm coming to the end of the questions. It has been almost 2 hours. But is there anything that you can, last thing, how can somebody impress you? Can you give one example of what specifically somebody did in an interview that gave you a great impression of the person that you'd like to share with people that may be looking to interview?
Yeah, in using the STAR method once, when I used to know what it was, I remember asking somebody, it's like, tell me about a time when, and this individual came back with at least 3 relative examples, but always mentioned it was the team. It was never, I did this. or I was responsible for that. It was we, and I loved hearing that because that is the kind of culture that I'm in. I need to, find the people that understand it. It's a we game. It's a team experience, and I just was so impressed by that. Never said I met this goal or I exceeded this goal or I got this new big client. It was a we thing, and it held a lot of meaning for me in that particular interview.
Great, thank you.
Personally, I look for, and these are going to be cliche words, and you're going to just like roll your eyes up, but attitude, enthusiasm, and a lot of energy, because 8 hours is a long day. And if you don't have all of those going with you, it's going to make it for a boring work week. So we have a lot of energy in my organization, and we have a great work group, and I totally agree. It's a we. No man is an island. I can't reference exactly who said that, but those are very well-spoken words, and I so encourage you to remember that, because you're not where you are today because of what you've done by yourself. It's always a collaborative effort, so just keep that in mind.
Rachel?
I like, personally, generally towards the end of the interview, I like hearing about people's interests outside the office. Have an interest, be passionate about your interest. I don't care if it's something that I've never heard of. I don't care if you absolutely love MMA fighting, and I don't even know what MMA fighting is. Like, I want to hear that you have a personality and you're passionate about certain things, whatever that thing might be. And again, you could hit the jackpot and have your passion be the same as whomever you're talking to. It happens. If you're a diehard Cleveland Browns fan, like, that should be on your resume, because you don't know, the hiring manager might also root for the Browns, which is tough. So, but I do, because again, you're going to work with these people. You're going to spend more time with these people than you do with your family, with your loved ones, and there's nothing worse than somebody who's got kind of no oomph to them. So I just be prepared to talk a little bit about yourself.
So let's do Andy, and then we'll get to your question.
Yeah, I would just say, do your homework and, know some interesting factoids, and, just know that show that you're interested in that position. I interviewed with a gentleman one time, and I got hired, and I Googled, I went to a Barron story, actually, and in the story, there was a little anecdote about how he had kicked the longest field goal in Ivy League history. So I didn't lead with that, but kind of at the end, I kind of threw that in there, and I think he was impressed that, not that I knew that fact, but that I just did some homework on it.
Exactly, yeah.
Tried to make it a little more personal.
I have had managers say, no, we're passing on this individual because they wore sneakers. No, we're passing on this individual. I never got a thank you response. Yeah. Absolutely. I've had managers say, no, we're passing on this individual. They have no personality, Lisa. They're just not a right fit for the team. I've had managers say, we're not hiring this person. They don't have the energy that we need. So again, personality, authenticity goes so far in a world, like you said, it's the environment that you're going to be succeeding in every single day. And again, if you're in something looking at PNC potentially, we need to put you in front of a client and have that client know that you're there for them to go over and above, and not meet expectations but beat expectations.
So clearly, everyone here is of a caliber of individual that it's beyond just getting a job to pay your bills. That's something that we all need to do. But this is really about a career path, and this is more about your profession. And you're in an industry, if you continue to pursue the financial world, keep that in mind. This is what makes you who you are. This isn't about you just getting a 9-to-5 job, and embrace it. Just embrace it, and work efficiently and work, passionately, as everyone here has shared that with you. But that gentleman had a question. I don't want to.
Yes, and specifically going back to the Cleveland Browns example.
Browns fan?
Are you a Browns fan?
No. I left 5 years ago. But you said that you, I kind of heard the consensus that on most parts, for most resumes, you don't want to see like an investment summary. Would you still include a extracurricular hobbies or?
Oh, yes.
Community service, big points for community service, engagement in your community, involvement, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say skills and interests should be on there. And again, like, you see a lot of resumes and some keyword might click and it might not be CFA, it might be Cleveland Browns, which I do not root for. Just, I'm a New Yorker, so definitely not.
So let me just share you that thought. The reason why, in my opinion, it may not apply to me and perhaps not to Andy because we're institutional money managers, so, you know, our focus target group clients is a little different, but most organizations that are not institutional, which is everybody else, so we got the banking, the retail, it's about networking. So that's why it's so much more important to know about your extracurricular activity. Why? Because your network that you're bringing in is who could be of interest to the organization. It's that connection that they may not have had a link with. Now you bring to the table not only your personal talents and skills, but whatever else you are associated, or whomever else you are associated with. So
Very well said, yeah.
that is very, very key. So this is definitely an industry of connections, and just keep that in mind.
So I did have one other thing. Ivana asked if we would ask her, I asked all the panelists to say what would you like to be asked about. So she has a passion for one of the other designations, so she wanted me to let her.
Yes. So everyone has heard of the CFA as charter holders. Most of you raised your hands, so applauds. That's a tremendous progress, especially in today. And I'm going to just caveat before I tell you a little bit about my other designation, and that is that I've done several interviews, and oftentimes I'm asked by students, actually, I mentor quite a few, what should they pursue, the MBA or the CFA? And CNN has done it, and NMSNBC has done it. CFA always outwins, both financially and from a prospect interview over an MBA. So if you're on the cusp, I don't know if you're pursuing higher education, it's not that it's not looked upon, but it's more economical to go the CFA route, and it's going to provide you the greater satisfaction monetarily later on as well. So just keep that in mind. So with that said, one of the other things is don't become stale in your organization, don't become stale in your profession. Things are constantly evolving. I alluded it to earlier to the gentleman at the front, and that is look to see what's new and developing. And the CFA Institute, and here's a little plug for them, is a wonderful organization. They're based on ethical standards, and that is something that our industry has suffered over the years, because you have a few rotten apples and all of a sudden everybody frowns upon how people are being treated and their investment choices. CFA Institute goes above and beyond, should try to be relevant to today's environment, and so be it. They introduced a few years back in 2006 the CIPM, the Certificate Investment Performance Standards. I see a few nodding their heads, so I'm guessing you guys are familiar with it, which is wonderful. It's a great designation. It's not as rigorous as the CFA, which is a 3-year program. The CIPM is a 2-year program. If for those that have your CFA charter holders, you're in luck, because you actually can go right into the CIPM with just the second level, which is really just one exam. Don't be fooled, it is just as rigorous as the CFA Institute, but the CFA charter holder, but it's not as comprehensive as the CFA. So it's something that I encourage you. And what the CIPM did, which is in Certificate of Investment Performance Measurement, it actually brought what was known for many, many years, the back office of performance studies. And clearly I'm biased, since that's what I've been doing all my life. And now we're a profession. Before it was just, a data kind of in the back, let them crunch the numbers. And now all of a sudden it's become a professional, recognized industry, and hence the need for this certification. And so with that, for those of you that are even portfolio analysts, even if you don't think you're going to be calculating performance returns on a portfolio, it is certainly a little bit more robust than ever before, and it really embraces what today is valued as important. and I'm sorry, and I'm certainly not going to insult or offend anyone here, that is not my intent, but face it, it's always about performance. I don't care how good you are, I don't care what your personality is like, but if you don't give good performance, it's not going to get you very far for long. And the reality is performance has to be true. It has to be transparent. It has to be calculated with the most respect of what it is that the manager is trying to represent and ultimately provide as a benefit to the client. So with that said, hopefully not too long-winded, but I have handouts here, like little fact sheets for those that may be of interest to them for their own personal growth or professional growth. And I have copies here. Obviously, you can look it all up on the CFA Institute website. And I certainly encourage it.
Well, with GIPS 2.0, there's a lot more need for people that can actually track performance. And this designation lets you show that you know how to track performance accurately and according to the GIPS.
That's correct. So GIPS, oh my goodness. GIPS, it's the GIPS 2020. GIPS stands for the Global Investment Performance Standards, and that's exactly what it is. They're standards that we as money managers try to abide by, and if you decide to claim compliance with GIPS standards, then you have an obligation to fulfill all of the requirements, just like you would for accounting, or just like you would for any other industry out there, whether it be in the HR position or in the education environment. So
they came up with this so that, like hedge funds, apples to apples, and so everybody, if you have GIPS standards and you're reporting your performance that way, you know that that's a true valuation comparative to every place else in the world, calculating it to GIPS.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's why it's important.
The gentleman right behind you had a question.
I see with the conversation, you pretty much answered it, but is that done internally so you can report to the portfolio manager how they're doing along the way?
Both. It's internal. Everything we do is GIPS. If you claim GIPS compliant, you are claiming compliance in every aspect of the report. So whether it be internally to your PMs or externally to your clients or externally to ads and advertisements or in RFPs, if you're at all, everything has to abide by those standards.
But so then if you're doing it internally, is there an outside audit or
Yes. So they don't call them audits, they call them verification, because you're being verified that you have complied with the standards. So it's just a different segment of auditing, but it's all encompassing. It's firm audit verification, and it goes down to the nitty-gritty of your accounting structure and your composite maintenance.
Thank you.
But it is definitely a new industry, just like the compliance has niches and they're paying people well. Performance measurement is a up-and-coming niche that pays very well because you need to find people that can do it.
Yes, it does pay the bills. So if you're looking for a job to pay the bills, that's one.
Well, you're passionate about it, so it's more than
I am.
Well, so I'm going to thank all of our speakers again for their time volunteering, and we really do appreciate your insights. It's very helpful to people that are looking to start the process or move to be brought up to date with what the big firms are doing, and it saves them a lot of time. So we appreciate all of your time in helping educate us. I did want to bring up again, AstraZeneca is March 21st. If you're a member of the Institute, it's a free steak dinner at the Boca Country Club, and you can mingle and network with the other charter holders of our association. And I want to say that there's going to be a little survey sent out, so please go ahead and fill it out so we can see what we could change, put anything that you'd like improved for next year on it. And we do look at all of those, and the board tries to do programs that our candidates and charter holders and association members really want. So if you have some ideas of things that you'd like us to do, please fill out your survey. And thank you all so very much.
And thank you,
Andy,
Christina.
Ivana.
Thank you.